Hi, and welcome to Transition Talks, a series of discussions with former athletes talking about their career, their transition away from competition, and how they've navigated their journey since. My name's Donna Kelso. I'm an ambassador for Athlete Soul and also serving on the Outreach Committee. Having worked with professional tennis players for many, many years, it's been a privilege to be involved with so many of these athletes throughout their career from when they commenced playing on the tour, witnessing how they have gone on to achieve great things, not only on court, but also after their playing career has ended, and many of them truly making a difference in their careers post competition. So today it's my absolute pleasure to talk with Jill Craybas, who I had the privilege of working with for a number of years. Jill had an extensive professional career on the WTA Tour after having competed for the University of Florida and also during that time winning the NCAA singles title. She reached a career high of 39 in singles, won the Japan Open, represented the US at the Beijing Olympics, and scored a memorable win over Serena Williams at Wimbledon, some of her many highlights. So Jill, welcome.
Thank you, Donna. It's good to see you. And it's, of course, great to be here. I'm happy to get involved and be interviewed by you. This is great. I'm really excited about it.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. Before we move on to talking about your transition, can you tell us a little bit about your career, what got you into tennis, and your transitions from collegiate to professional?
Yeah. So I actually played a lot of other sports before I started tennis. My parents sort of threw us all into soccer, and I played field hockey, softball. And then tennis came around because I think my parents, they weren't quite sure what to get us for Christmas one year. So they gave my brother, my sister, and I some wooden tennis rackets and a week of tennis lessons. And that's how it all began. And honestly, I don't know, out of all the sports I played, I don't know why I chose tennis at that point. I was still pretty young. But I dove into tennis. I loved it right away. And then obviously it became a topic of discussion in my family whether to turn pro after high school or go to college. And I always wanted to go to college. I wanted that experience. I think part of it was I knew my parents valued education so much as well. So I took a little bit of a different route than a lot of other professional athletes by going to college. And I loved it. I played on the college team. It was great to be part of a team. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I got a little injured during my senior year, so I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to transition to professionally that quickly. So I took a year off, and I always told myself I definitely want to at least try to play professionally because I knew I'd regret it if I didn't at least try. So I tried and went on my own for a couple of years, made a little bit money, and then finally had enough money to hire a coach. And then from that point on, really started doing a lot better, and then was able to have a 16-year career professionally on the WTA tour, which, to be honest, I tell people this all the time, like I would not do anything differently. I loved it. I would do it all over again. So I'm so happy that I kind of took that plunge and went into professional tennis.
Wow, as you mentioned, you did have one of the significantly longer careers playing professional tennis, and lots of fond memories. You also contributed to being part of the player council at that point, as well as
That's great.
competing on court. When you were getting towards the end of your professional career, did you have a plan in place, and how long, perhaps in advance, did you think about your transition?
That's a great question. I didn't think about it that much because I was so into what I was doing. And Donna, I don't know if you remember this, but I played till I was 39. And at that time, it was considered pretty late. And, you know, my friends on tour were calling me grandmother of the tour. So because at that time, it was unusual to play that long. Now I love to see that people are playing a lot longer, and it's not strange to see people playing into mid to late 30s, which is great. I think that's
That's
awesome.
exactly true. Very,
Yeah.
very.
But I didn't really look ahead. I kind of wish I did a little bit more often, maybe plan. I think more players are doing that now, which is great to see. They're starting to get into other businesses and marketing, and I think that's really important that players are starting to understand that, because I didn't necessarily do that. There were a lot of players at the time after I retired that came up to me afterward and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous you have a college degree," because players were worried about that. They weren't quite sure what they wanted to do. I didn't necessarily view my degree in that way, but now that I look back, my degree was in TV and film production, so it was communications, and that's been a real asset for me now, as you know, that I'm in the media quite a bit. So I didn't necessarily think that was going to happen. It sort of fell into my lap a little bit because, Donnie, you know how much media stuff we do. And I got the opportunity to, go into the booth at some tournaments just randomly to help out. And it sort of like steamrolled from there. I started doing a little bit more, and then some networks started to ask me to do a little bit more. So it transitioned for me naturally, which was nice. But that
Wow.
doesn't
That's
mean that I
one
didn't
of my
struggle before
questions.
them. What's
Yeah,
that?
that was going to be one of my questions. Studying, media telecommunications in college, did you at that point perhaps think that, you know, maybe post competition you would move into that field, or, maybe subliminally?
I actually didn't think about it because my passion in college was actually to do landscape design, but
Okay.
I couldn't do that with playing collegiate tennis because you have lab works and you just couldn't do it. So communications was actually my second choice, but I did loved it. But we did a lot of different stuff. I did more behind the camera stuff, like TV production, directing, and stuff like that, which is really fun. But having said that, you did get a lot of work as far as being able to interview people. We had a lot of media work done being part of a collegiate team, athletic team. So I think I was thrown into the media, and we got media training in college too. I mean, the University of Florida did a fantastic job of training us a little bit to be able to handle interviews in a good way. So that helped a lot. And then of course on tour, we get a lot of opportunities to speak and to get interviewed by journalists. And but I didn't really necessarily make that connection in my mind beforehand, because even once I retired, I was like, what am I going to do? I still had those thoughts.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So talk us a little bit through, when you did stop competing, your thought process in terms of making decisions as to what your next steps may be. And also, Jill, you were known as one of probably the fittest athletes on the tour when you were competing.
Thank you,
So,
Donna.
no, it's true. So physically, when you stopped, the daily grind of practicing and playing matches, I'm interested to hear, physically how that impacted you, if at all.
Um, so physically, yeah, I didn't necessarily, I would say I knew I wanted to take time off. So I did know that. I didn't necessarily want to jump into something where I was working every day right away, because we're traveling 10 months out of the year, pretty much tournament to tournament. So I knew I kind of wanted to stay settled and enjoy being in one place for a little bit. Having said that, after 2 months, I was getting antsy. Like, you can't believe, I was like, I feel like I need to go to the airport, get on a plane, something. And I think it was just because that was what was considered our routine, and you're in the same position. So that was a bit strange to get used to. And for 2 to 3 months, I kid you not, I would wake up, shower, put on my athletic gear, and get up to go somewhere. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't have to go anywhere. What am I going to do? What am I going to do all day? And of course I went to go work out, but I didn't work out to the extent and the hours that I did before. And that was fine. That was okay. It's not like I was craving being on the court for 4 hours a day anymore. But as long as I got some physical work, because that's just part of who I am, I did need to be active and stay active. So the training, I mean, I missed being on the court. I didn't necessarily miss the stress of the competition.
Uh, that's good to hear. And then from that point onwards, in terms of next steps, firstly, did you have much support, if any, during that period? Were there resources that you could tap into? Did you have any mentors? You mentioned that when you retired, after you had retired, other athletes would come to you. Did you seek information, in a similar vein, or did you managed it internally?
I wouldn't necessarily say I looked for it, but people approached me asking me how it was doing. So there are a couple, a few athletes that called me and reached out just, for my concern because they had gone through it, which I thought was phenomenal. And they reached out to me and just said, like, how are you doing? Because I know what it's like. And then once I started, and then of course my coach Raj, who you know very well, Raj Chaudhary, was a huge support for me, mentor, and my family, of course, was always supportive and amazing. So I was lucky I had all of them around me. So I could voice, like, if I wasn't feeling good, if I was struggling with things. But I did have some athletes who had gone through that transition, that struggled, and that had, reached out to me and just asked me how I was doing. And that was really helpful. And then I started getting more involved in the media. And when I started seeing my former athletes that I played tennis with, for example, at Roland Garros one year, one of the guy players that I used to be on the tour with, who had already retired, I saw him in line at the lunch line, and he was just like, "How are you doing?" And it's like, it's weird. Like, you feel like you're thrown into this world that you don't know because you're so used to being in your tennis bubble and traveling week in and week out with everybody. And he was great. He gave me one piece of advice that I reiterate to other people now because it was very helpful for me. Was he just like, we're so used to just being like in one frame of mind. We're like tennis, like training, and everything is about being the best that you can be. He was like, no one's really had the opportunity to try anything else. So he's like, he goes, just try everything. And he said, if you see something that looks like it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's like a class that you would never take, he's like, just say yes, just do yes, 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 yes. And so I started doing that. I just started trying a lot of different things, and that's where the chocolate comes in, which we'll get to in a moment. But and I just started trying all these different things, and it was so great because when you're in your sport, you don't necessarily get those opportunities to do that. Even when you're home, you're still thinking about tennis and training and, wanting to get better. So I thought that was great advice. It might not work for everybody, but it really did wonders for me.
I think that's phenomenal advice for anybody to try different things, because you never know what opportunities might come your way.
Yeah. Or people you meet, or yeah.
Totally. And they may introduce you to, a different business venture or a different avenue that, you had maybe not even contemplated.
Right.
Now, you mentioned briefly in that last bit of conversation, chocolate. I can recall a number of years ago, you were still playing on the tour, and you had this dream of a chocolate and coffee place up in the mountains. So I know that's something that's been very near and dear to your heart. And you're also very much an advocate for sustainability. So the chocolate business, tell us how you fell into that, and what amazing things you've done with that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Donna, that's a great memory that you remember that vision that I had. Yes, I wanted a whole mall of coffee, chocolate, ice cream, bookstore, everything. But it was one of those things that I was having lunch with Raj, my coach, and we were just having lunch outside in Southern California. And we were in this beautiful outdoor area that have shops and restaurants and stuff like that. And there was a bakery, and it was a French pastry bakery. And so it was offering master chocolatier classes. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not a master, but if you want to learn from anyone, it's probably a French chocolate master. So I walked in and I just said, I saw that you're offering classes. What's the pricing, the availability? And I actually met the guy that was, I can't remember. It's called MOF in France. It's like the biggest award you can get in chocolatier and pastry. And he said, well, he's like, the class starts next week. And he said, it's really for people that are already in the industry that are almost at the master level. But he said, we have 8 availabilities and we only have 7 people and we haven't been able to fill the last one. So he said, if you're available, you can have that last spot. So I jumped at it and I went in. I have to say I was completely lost. They have all their little lingo that I wasn't understanding because I was a complete novice. But everyone in the class was really helpful. They all came in. This is actually funny because they all came in with their chef's uniforms on, all ironed. And before they even went inside, they were so nervous. They're like, oh my God, and I'm in my athletic gear. And they're all like, does my master chef outfit look okay? I was like, oh God, what am I getting myself into? But everyone was so helpful. Everyone was trying to help me along the way. And then from that point on, I just started practicing at home. And Raj was saying to me, he's like, oh, you look like you're having so much fun, just experimenting, doing this. What do you think about starting a business? And so I was like, let's just go for it. I love it. So I went for it. And now it's been about, oh gosh, maybe 4 years now. And with the media requirements I haven't been able to grow it significantly, but over the last 3 years, I've been able to sustain being in 2 stores in Southern California throughout the last few years, which has been great. And they've been consistent orders and I've gotten really good feedback. And you mentioned the sustainability. So just a brief summary, that it's all dark chocolate truffles because I like to stay healthy. And the inside is sweetened only with honey. And since it's sweetened with honey, we donate a portion of our sales to a nonprofit to save the bee population.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Yes.
Doing good things in the world as well
Yes.
as creating phenomenal chocolate.
I'm very excited about it. So hopefully I'll be able to grow it a little bit more so we can do it nationwide. And so
fantastic. Well, forward to it. Now, currently you're heavily involved in the media. I think you're probably traveling just as much as you were when you were competing.
I am.
Right? So
yeah, I mean, maybe
stories about what brought you into the roles that you're in now, and how you're finding that being, I guess, on the other side of the lens, the other side of the camera, and the other side of the microphone.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I didn't think I would be traveling as much as I am, but I still love being around the sport a lot. And I just think, to me, sports in general is phenomenal. I mean, everything I think you learn and gain for life in general from sports is just amazing. So the fact that I'm able to still be involved, I find very valuable. And I've been able to do a lot of different roles, which it's basically just been about networking. I mean, I started with commentating. And through commentating, I started with radio commentating. And through the radio, I got to meet other people that were involved in television, and then other people involved in basically hiring to do player interviews. So now I've sort of been able to do quite a few things between commentating, off-court interviewing players with more longer 15-20 minute stories, and then also post-match interviews on court and in front of the stadium and stuff like that. So I love that I love that there's a variety of things to do, because I think it keeps challenging you to kind of improve and do different roles. And I love that. I mean, Australian Open, for example, is great. They kind of just they throw you into different things and they're just like, go for it, which I think is awesome, because you have to sort of step up and do it. And I love that they kind of have that trust in you to be like, okay, you can do this and stuff like that. And that just, you gain confidence over time. But everybody I've worked with, I think, has been fantastic and helpful. And so I've really, really enjoyed it.
And being a former professional tennis player, now when you're interviewing players, I would imagine you can assimilate to what they're going through after a win, after a loss, about life on tour. So you bring that massive advantage to the job that
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah, it's been great. And you can see in their reaction a little bit the way you phrase a question. And some of my bosses even have come up to me afterward and said, you can see that the players kind of react to you differently, which I consider a compliment, which is great because yeah, I just feel you can empathize with them a little bit, because there are moments where I'm just like, well, I know what that feels like. And yeah, and it can be tough. So that I was happy when that, to me, is valuable feedback for me to hear from one of my bosses. So that was really nice. But I don't know. I find it fun. I love the interaction. I love hearing their stories. I love hearing what they're feeling, what they're going through. And, the post-match interviews are great, but if I can get those longer feature stories, that's when you can really get like the personality and the character from the athlete, which I think is awesome.
Exactly. And you may be able to bring in some transition discussion
Yeah.
to those conversations that you're
Yeah. I
having
would.
with athletes, because I think it's such a vital thing. I mean, obviously that's what's brought us here today, to have this conversation, to learn about your career and your transition and what you've been doing since. So, couple of things. What would you say transferable skills would be that you have brought from being a professional athlete at a very high level to what you're doing now? We talked about the empathy and the understanding, but any other sort of practical skills?
I think, well, yeah, I think definitely from, I think from sports in general and from tennis in general, it's about, things are not going to go always as planned, and you have to learn how to deal with that and learn from those mistakes, learn from failures, and not let it overwhelm you or overcome you. And I think any athlete would probably agree with that, and you don't even realize it at the time. He's just kind of, you just keep going. And tennis is tough because, I mean, there
Individual sport to start with.
not
So
only, yeah, so not only, that's a
out there
great
by
point.
yourself.
Yeah. Individual, like if you have a good, we always say that in commentating all the time. If you have that support team is so important when you're out there, even just to look over a couple times and get just some positive feedback, because you're out there on your own. And I think also, it's not, yeah, I lost my train of thought now, but it's not easy because, um, you can get down on yourself pretty quickly. And I know there's for example, there's like encore coaching now and stuff like that. But I always thought like, okay, no, that's where you learn the best is when you're out there on your own and you have to try and overcome. So yes, I used encore coaching when it was there, but when it wasn't there, you had to figure things out. And to me, that only makes you stronger. But tennis in particular, another reason it's so difficult is because, I mean, players play 28 to 30 tournaments a year. Some play less, some play more. If you win 2 tournaments in a year, I mean, a lot of people consider that a pretty good year. So you're losing 26 to 28 times. I mean, you're going to lose.
That's
And
right.
to be able to consistently over and over try and let that go, I just feel like that makes you mentally stronger and stronger and stronger. And to me, like little things that now happen throughout the day, whether there's like a tough moment or stuff like that, I feel like, okay, like you can get through it. You can get through it. And I think just like life lessons, like learning how to deal with failure, learning how to deal with loss, learning how to deal with, struggles, travels, becoming independent. Like, I think there's just so much that you can learn from. And the other thing I forgot to mention is when I was, retiring, like I would say I struggled for about a year and a half before I felt like I was like, and the guy that told me to try everything, he said, you have to give it 3 years. I was like, 3 years, that's forever.
Oh, that's a
I
long time.
know. He's like, you got to give it
In
3
an
years.
athlete's life, that's a very long time.
It's a very long time. I know. But a year and a half for me, it was a year and a half where I just felt unsettled is probably the word I would use. And, because you're all of a sudden thrown into this world and you're like, I don't really know this world very well. And so to be able to deal with that, I think, just probably made me stronger too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that resilience and
Yeah. Resilient. That's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mathematically, 50% of players lose in the first round.
Yeah, I
So,
know. Yeah. You know that, you know that just as well as we do. Yeah.
it on the other end. Oh my goodness. So, any messages, any advice other than, try anything and everything,
Yeah.
that you would give
To a
to?
certain extent, to a certain extent. Yeah.
Um,
Any advice? I would say, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people say this, but you have to enjoy it. I think I have some friends that played on tour that just don't want to pick up a racket. They don't want to see a racket or a tennis court. And I find that kind of sad in a way because it was such a huge part of their lives. And so to find little ways to enjoy it. And I also think something that I emphasize that I think is very valuable is it doesn't always have to be about tennis or your sport. For me, it was very healthy to, if I lost, go out, go see the world, like see all the different cultures, learn different things. I think have different outlets, even while you're immersed in your sport, I think is huge because I just think it's healthy. It was healthy for my mind to not always be
Absolutely.
consistently 24/7 tennis because it would be too much for me. Now, some people, everyone's individual and maybe for some people that worked, but I think it's healthy to have other outlets, other interests, and go and do it. That would be another big piece of advice.
No, it's phenomenal advice. It really is. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And for athletes who are maybe looking to move into the media or the communications area, and as we've seen over years, pretty much every match is televised, broadcast, live streamed. Um, so that is an industry that has grown significantly.
Yes.
Um, any pieces of advice if athletes are looking to move into that line of work?
Um, I think, and you're right. It's great that there's quite a few opportunities popping up. I've had a lot of players call me about media. I think one of the things, one actually, one female player just called me a couple weeks ago for some advice because she was going for her first time for commentating, and the best advice I got that I think really helped me was as a professional tennis player, normally you go in as an analyst, you're analyzing what's happening. And so you're the expert and you know what you're talking about, but make sure the tone comes across like you know what you're talking about. So for me, I would say something if I was analyzing a point or a strategy, I would say it, but my intonation would almost go in a way where it was like I was questioning myself. But the best advice I got was like, say it with confidence. And then if you're unsure later, then correct yourself, but say right away with confidence, like be direct, be confident, and just say it with a lot of purpose and strength. And it comes across to the viewer like that too. And then if you are thinking about it later and you want to change something, then do it later, but sound confident in what you're doing. And I think that was good advice.
Yeah, I think that's maybe even a message for life
Yeah,
in
probably. Yeah.
commentating.
Yeah.
To be confident in doing what you're doing. Well,
Yeah.
Jill, it's been an absolute pleasure
Yeah.
chatting
Thanks,
about
Donna.
your journey, your career, your transition, and the amazing things that you have been doing in life post competitive tennis. And it's wonderful still seeing you love the sport so much and giving back to the sport so much. And thank you for being part of this Transition Talks series with Athlete Soul. And we look forward to seeing a lot more of you as you continue to provide your valuable advice to other athletes.
Thanks, Donna. I appreciate it. Thank you. I can't wait to see you soon.
I know. See you.